Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's Alisha Braché here at Cosmic Gateway. And as part of World Unity Week, I am bringing some true life stories to you, some real people who've gone through some incredible experiences. And it is my absolute delight to bring Jen from Infused with Light here with me today to talk about her journey, her light language, and to share a transmission at the end. So thank you, Jen. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for facilitating this. It's a great opportunity, and hopefully, we can educate a few people on the wonderful world that we dabble in.
Absolutely. So, as part of World Unity Week, I thought it's really important to share the voices of those people who've gone through some extraordinary experiences in their life of, being in what we would consider the 3D world of the Matrix and the abrupt catalysts that bring on an awakening and accompanying with that, gifts and abilities that are very connected to our galactic heritage and our ancestry and our connection with the stars. And honestly, I couldn't think of a better person to share her journey and her story and her gifts. I think you are probably one of the most incredibly talented linguistics. Oh, there's a
I know
new
that
term.
we've made. Oh, I could take that to university. It's like linguistics. Yes, please. This is how it
Um,
happens, everybody. The magic.
and to share about that, and of course, light language is becoming more and more commonly known. Light language comes in the form of sound, tone, verbal, artistic expression, painting, drawing. So it comes in various tones, and everyone's is very unique and different and unique to their own soul signature, as I like to call it. And it has different fundamentals for its purpose and usage. And I think everyone uses it slightly different or it sounds slightly different. Some, have similar contrasting aspects. So yeah, we'll get into so this segment will be broken up into hearing about your personal journey, about your, take on light language and, how you use it in your unique way. And then obviously ending with a bit of a light language for everyone to listen in and tune into and get the activation. So take it away, Jen. How did this all begin
Oh,
for
where do we
you?
go? Well, I think it's, since we're talking about sort of, humanity, I mean, as someone who's just a regular human just living their life, this is not something I would have ever imagined one I'd be talking about. And, it really just shows you if you can kind of stay open to the things, if you are experiencing the amazing twists, turns, and gifts and people that can unfold. So, I guess for a lot of my life, I felt like it was happening to me, not for me, but now I have changed that perspective since. So I was someone who did not believe in any of these topics. I was very science, factual based. I liked proof. I always liked sci-fi and TV shows of that nature. Surprise, surprise. It was there somewhere in my recall, but I was very, even with religion, I had very rigid views. I was very black and white, very proof based. And, as they say, those types of people get cracked open the hardest in the most brutal way with a lot of lessons. And I can think of a lot of people that I aspire to who have had quite brutal and abrupt awakenings. So mine kind of started, I saw a great teacher who was a meditation teacher. And this was kind of off the back of what we would call maybe a divine counterpart or a very important soulmate type of relationship connection. And sort of as you do, seeking for answers and guidance, I went to meditation and she was channeling, and it didn't disturb me. I was actually quite curious by it. There were a lot of sounds. It was very ethereal, kind of like someone singing and sort of chanting. And at first I thought, oh, sort of sounds a bit like speaking in tongues from what I've read about that in religious contexts. So I kind of just listened to it. I went to that for a couple of years and I still see her and go to her classes. And eventually over time, I just started holding notes and tones. I felt my throat just occasionally, just a little ooh or a little note. I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'm just singing some 80s music, wowing around the house. Great. And then, I'm telling these little things because it was very incremental, and then it just kind of went woof. So then I started to have some strange dreams in 2016 about I'd had a pretty intense separation from someone, so I was very distraught emotionally. My heart chakra was very cracked wide open, and there was a lot of grief in there. And I was pretty much begging for like answers and praying to people that, I was like, well, if you are there, then you can help me. And sort of being very, excuse me, see, there goes my throat, difficult to talk about. And I went to bed and had this dream, like just begging and praying, very close to suicidal thoughts, which had kind of been a struggle through my life with depression, and just like, please, 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 I need something. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I've done. Went to bed, had this dream, this booming voice, the loudest voice. It was like a tunnel of the word Sedona went through my ears and reverberated out the other side. And I woke straight up, like I just went snap into my bed, woke up and was like, what the hell? Got straight up, went onto Google Maps, typed in Sedona. Now, I've been to America, I travel there all the time. I love it. I love the national parks. So I was very surprised that I hadn't heard of Sedona. And then when I looked at it, I was like, oh, it's rocks and desert. I was like, I'm an oceany person. I like surfing. I like green things. And I was really rattled by it all day. It was just so profound. It was so hard not to pay attention to that. And then I thought, okay, well, I obviously need to go to this Sedona place. And then I was like, well, how is that going to happen? Whatever. And I was like, by this point, with my meditation teacher and a few things like this, let's call them, some sort of interesting synchronicities were happening to me. I sort of started dabbling in like angelic realms and archangels, and I'd kind of just on a whim one day gone, oh, there's this like retreat that Archangel Shamiel says that if you want to, if you're part of his clan, you can say this and you'll go to, St. Louis in Missouri. And that's where his etheric retreat are. And if anyone resonates with angels, there's a lot of presence of them in various parts of the world, if that's something that resonates with you. And so I just was sitting on my lunch break one day and thought, well, I got nothing to lose. I was feeling pretty crappy post breakup, and and I was in a desperate place, let's be honest. And I'm really lucky I didn't go a different direction. And then maybe within 2 weeks, my friend had announced that she was getting married, and it was in St. Louis, Missouri, and I was able to tack Sedona onto the back of that trip. And I was sitting there kind of going, oh, it's just coincidence. Or what, like, oh, yeah, okay, like it's cool, but it's a cool coincidence. And so I get to Sedona, and I'm pretty sure that's where my old self died. Like I met this wonderful lady who took me, because I was there by myself. I travel a lot by myself, and so it was hard to get around. So I booked like a tour with this beautiful lady who had a lot of shaman aspects, and she took me to all these, she kept calling them galactic portal sites, and I was looking at her like, do you mean like where I can see UFOs and stuff? Because I was into that. Like I don't dismiss that. Like I was kind of like, well, that's cool. And I think that's a good launch pad, like, or maybe like for paranormal. And it was beautiful. There was like a lot of sky activity. Obviously it's close to Area 51 and whatnot. And so that was cool. And I've always been a big fan of astronomy. So I was enjoying that. I didn't know what she kept saying, galactic portals. I was like, whatever, we'll just carry on. And there was this tree, and in Sedona they have these beautiful juniper trees that twist around, and one side was completely dead, and on the other side it was beautiful, and I hadn't recognized it, and I'd crossed through it, and I just had this meltdown. I just started crying. My heart fell to the floor. I was convulsing. I actually didn't know what was happening to me medically. I thought something was very, very wrong. And yeah, I get emotional about it because it was it it literally was like my whole body was reacting to being somewhere that resembled an aspect of home, which I now understand. So I'd walked past this tree, and she made me turn around and look at it. She said, that's your old life and this is your new life. And I have a picture of that tree, and I was like, that's the moment where everything in my life changed. And I just cried, and I felt like I was home. Yeah, like I think a lot of people who resonate have this homesick feeling, and I've always throughout my life like an outcast. Always likable, but didn't really get on with people, didn't really fit, had abstract creative writing ideas, and just didn't really know where I fit. So then I just had the most beautiful unfolding of events in Sedona, just beautiful. Then, I'd always wanted to see wolves in the wild, and then I magically ended up meeting this like lovely Native American, tribe who don't allow people to visit this medicine wheel lodge. And my mum at the time was dealing with lung cancer and was quite sick. And I was able to go there, like invited in, and met these like amazing wolves. And again, my heart was just like, okay. And then I just met a whole series of people, of things that just started to make sense, more of this galactic sort of energy. And then I went to a great place run by Amanda Romania, who was a wonderful mentor and teacher. And she had all these like, her shop was called Atlantis, and I believe it's still in Sedona. And on the walls there was like all this weird language. Now I'm a big fan of English languages, fonts, all that type of stuff. And it just looked really familiar. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And then there were all these like galactic races. So there was like pictures of them all across the wall and their like language underneath it. And I just remember kind of going, like, not being weirded out by it, but just like, oh, okay. And I had a session with her and some information was divulged. And then I just went to this shop and I just kept intuitively finding things about Arcturus. And then a great friend of mine here I went home and was like, hey, do you have any books on this? And she is an amazing friend of mine and mentor, and she had like literally 7 books on it. And I was like, I just started reading things that just started making sense. And so from that moment on, I just started to kind of research a little bit about maybe there is more out there. Like maybe, and I saw a lot of amazing sky phenomenon activity too. So I'm not talking UFOs specific. I'm talking about like this huge ball of orange, like obviously like just amazing things. And I was like, okay, so there's some things here that are making me, and I was kind of like looking into energies and orbs and photos and that type of thing too. So there was that in the background. And I just kind of came home and realized that I needed to be a little bit more open to these amazing things that had just happened to me in quick succession. It was a lot to process. And then so if we skip forward a little bit, my mum passed away, and that's when I got really sick neurologically. I've always had neurological problems, and I was like kept getting told, and I say told because I don't really know how it happens, like in dream space or kind of what I would call like a clairvoyant sort of way, that I had to clean up my act and become this clean vessel. So that basically meant like fruit and veg. Not that my diet was particularly bad, but there were some things like some diet cokes, and everyone likes a bit of junk food here and then. So I was really being guided to be super clear. And then the clearer I became, the more I started to do these like tones and sounds that would come out of me. And then if we fast forward a few more years, my dad has passed away about 1.5 years ago, and I also had at that same time a very intense argument with someone that had been very profound in my life. So I wasn't with that person at the time, but they were someone that I thought I was going to end up spending my life with. And we just had this huge argument, and all this grief and all this emotion just erupted out of me. And then all of a sudden, I was like, I'm speaking a different language. And I was like, what the actual? And he went quiet, and I went quiet and hung up the phone. And it continued out of me for, I think, close to 24, like it was a lot. And I was in the park and it just sounded like Russian to me. I was like, oh, okay. And because I've had neurological migraine issues in the past, I was like, I'm having stroke, something's happening, something's cerebral. I've heard about, I have aphasia, which is where you get your words jumbled. I was like, oh, something's happening to me. And it just kept coming and coming and coming and coming. And I'd messaged a couple of people, Alisha being one of them, because I was like, I don't know who to talk to about this, because I'm either going to have to check myself into a mental hospital, or because I had the guidance of, Alisha, I had my meditation teacher, Carmel, I had my good friend, Jen, I had people around me who weren't adverse to this stuff. It was a safe space for me to be like, I don't know what's happening, and I wanted to kind of sit with it. And it took me a little while to sit with it and just not freak out and let it integrate into my body. And then as soon as I started researching about it, and I've just recently spoken to Yvonne, who is someone who is kind of sort of a bit of a way shower in light language, I realized very quickly that's what I was speaking. And then fast forward another 3 years. here we
God
are.
has it been? Wow. It's incredible. And
Yeah.
I feel very
It's
privileged to have watched that journey unfold for you and see, from when that eruption happened to how it's progressed and how it's
yeah.
transformed
It
and how
was
it used
yeah.
that.
Yeah, it was, and I just want to put that out there to people. Like, it was a very traumatic experience in a sense, because I never asked for it. And you're trying to deal with the shame of this. Well, I now see it as a beautiful gift, but at first I was like, I felt shame because I didn't know what was happening to me.
Mm.
But I'm obviously just a conduit and a vessel. And I think most people are like, oh yeah, I've had a psychic reading. So it's not that far. And then I started looking into the science aspect of it, because I wanted to I went through every medical aspect to check that I wasn't medically woo-woo. So I did a lot of scans, tests, all that type of stuff. So I ruled that out. And
Talk
then,
a little bit about that process in depth of.
yeah, so I had a neurologist who spoke to me a lot about, I get really intense migraines, which I mentioned. I get aphasia, which is where your words and your language center is particularly targeted. It's usually in the middle of the brain. So instead of saying like I need to go to the shops, you might say shops go cat. It's this kind of jumble. So when it first happened, I was like, there's got to be something happening in that language center. Like there's got to be something going on there. I did about 3 MRIs. Nope, like there's little infarctions just from regular migraines, but there was nothing else there. And I was like, okay. Did my blood pressure, went and saw psychiatrists, psychologists, and counselors who I was kind of seeing anyway throughout my life, like intermittently, just to deal with life stuff in general. I thought maybe it was grief happening. And I guess I should also add into the mix that once both my parents passed, let's call them paranormal activities ramped up. So there was a lot of other things in the background happening behind it. It was quite overwhelming. So once I'd kind of ruled out the medical thing of, okay, I don't have any sort of things showing up on any PET scans or MRIs, I was like, okay, let's speak to some other people about it. And yeah, like it's not like I go on a date like, oh hey, by the way, just it's still it's something it's kind of sacred and private. And I understand that a lot of people who experience things are it's a little bit different. But I guess I use the example of Reiki, that once upon a time was considered incredibly woo-woo. But I went down the physics and the science route of everything is energy. Literally every single thing is energy. And we literally are from stars, and you can research that as scientific fact. Like we came from star matter and like dust and rocks and stuff. So these are just my opinions. So it made sense to me. And then once I started seeing other professionals and sort of having quantum healing sessions and talking to people like yourself, I was able to, and the lady in Sedona who kind of already knew, but she wasn't going to, she let me experience that myself and then digest it before I could ask questions. And same with like the shamans and things I met. I was really lucky. I had good support network around me. And I guess it took me a little while to be like, well, I'm just going to ask. And I think I asked you like a zillion questions. And I'm very analytical. I was like, well, what about this? And how could that happen? Why would that happen? And how is that possible? And that doesn't make sense. Like I really went through the scrutiny and putting those people through the ringer. And it wasn't so much as a distrust of what they believed in. It was more I want to understand what's going on here. And once I ruled out all the linear structures and realized through various other methods to like meditation that no, this is not this is not some random thing that's just happened to you. It was and then I started to use it and it started to become this magical tool. And I was like, cool. And I always joke with Alisha that I was always good at languages. Let's add
Yeah.
another one into the mix, right? Like dialects. And so now it's like, yeah, cool. Now I've got a few more under my belt. So that was a very long-winded answer.
No, that's great. And is that something like that you see as like a common thing amongst people who speak light language, is that potentially they are good, they are bilingual, multilingual, have an interest in languages?
And this is the thing, it's so unique. And I've interviewed a lot of people on my podcast, and I've got some beautiful people that I really admire. And everyone's story of how it came on is incredibly different. So mine's called spontaneous ignition. So that's where
Okay.
it just literally erupts out of you. And Yvonne talks about that, where it's like that can also come through a Kundalini experience or a sexual kind of energy where it's like whew, up and out. So to me, there's like an intense emotional trigger. And I think you gave the great analogy of like I was a volcano and everything had kind of just cleared. On top of the messages to be healthy, I was able to then clearly channel. So I think it really isn't. Some people do it via Reiki. Some people have had it come through just
Mm.
through meditation and seeing symbols and codes and things. So yeah, it's really, really unique. And that's, I guess, what can make it troubling and hard. But there's quite a huge light language community out there, and some of the groups that I follow are amazing. So and
Sorry,
really supportive too.
I had to
Our
clear
throat
my
chakras.
my throat chakra. I'm
We're all
feeling it.
wild today. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think there's any one particular way, and a lot of people ask me if you can learn light language, and I don't really think you can. I think you can open up to it to a degree, but everyone has differing opinions on that too. But
Mhm.
um, yeah, and it's the other thing I should say is if a lot of people get activated by listening to other people's light language. So when I was
Thank you.
kind of
Yeah.
curious, I started like researching some other people, and like the more I listened to my teacher, the more I was like, oh, that's what that is. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of like if it's in you, you'll get activated by someone else speaking it or hearing it or looking at it in a coded drawing. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And
yeah.
I think that's I've seen that a lot in people who hear it and it feels familiar, or it sounds familiar,
Yeah.
I should say. And I heard
Yeah.
so many people say that, oh my goodness, as a kid, I used to talk this language and then it
Oh.
disappeared. So I think that's something that's, I don't know, I've heard that as quite a common story.
Yeah. And
It was there, it
yeah.
disappeared at
And
a
now
later.
people are like, "Oh, my kid's babbling." It's like, are they, or are they speaking like a multidimensional language? Like, I would really tune into that if that's something that's you're experiencing.
Mhm. So I also, I guess my next question, and probably something that often people are curious about, is like, what is the purpose of it? What is the function of it? And, just going back to what we were talking about in the beginning, is that different people's light language may have different functionality. So for you personally, what do you use your light language for? What do you feel is the purpose of it? How do you use it?
I guess maybe we should also give like my definition of light language is that it's a heart-based soul language. It's something that bypasses those linear structures of the mind. So it's not like a Latin derivative based language that we learn. It sort of has no alphabet. That's why it's so difficult to sort of, you couldn't really pinpoint what it is. But for me, it's language of the soul. And I really do believe everyone can speak it, read it, write it, or has the ability, because so many of us have incarnated all over the galaxies. And yeah, that's what, and I love that more and more people are doing it. But that's how I perceive my definition of it. So I guess my light language is pretty diverse. um, but I guess the main thing I've noticed with mine is it's an activation tool. So I feel like the people who were guided to me are sort of like how I was, sort of looking for answers, curious, they're resonating, they might be looking up Pleiades or Sirius, or just wanting to know a little bit more about just ascension in general. And we'll sort of have a session, and it's usually just, again, it's like I'm clearing a lot of dense energy so that they kind of become this clear pipe to me, and it just, everything can kind of sink in. And I have these crazy dreams where I'm like, I call it night school, and they really give me specific information. I don't go into that in my sessions, but it's a lot of biomedical information. So
Do you want to share a little bit about that? Because I
I
find
can,
it so
yeah,
fascinating.
we can. So I'm terrible at maths and science on this 3D Earth, like just terrible, and was kicked out of both of them and hated them. No interest whatsoever. But obviously, in one aspect of myself, I must be some type of molecular biologist, because I learn about cells and cell structure. And so something that's become very important to me is like they kept saying, water, 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 you have to drink water. I'm like, what? Why? Like, it was like, well, DNA, cellular energy, water, we're made up of water. People, it's going to be an assault to their system if they're not hydrated. So kind of basic lessons about that, and then explaining things like tetrahydrons and dodecahedrons, so the actual structure of a cell, what they're containing, and how they equate to different energies like fire or water or what they are, and then in turn you can translate that into chakras or however you like to
Mhm.
break that down.
Mhm.
Like another thing that came through to me was like the tensegrity of thinking, which was like a geometrical structure that everything, even our thinking, our thought patterns are all connected, and then even our codes are, and then even in the quantum field. So a code that is already happening in quantum, even if there was like a brick wall, it would continually happen, and that's quantum physics. So you can look up that tangible stuff, but this was stuff I was like, what is happening here? I don't understand quantum physics. I don't understand tensegrities of thinking. Like, I don't even know what that word was. And so basically I have these little downloads. I go wake up and I write them down, I research them, and then I'll try to meditate on it. And then usually my sessions with people, that then is relevant to what I'm doing. So I think a lot of mine is activating them and helping people just gently nudge or steer them into, hey, maybe you should have a look at this, or
Mhm.
maybe some aspects of Atlantis resonate with you. It's kind of helping people. I don't ever like to tell anybody. I don't think that's our place. I think it really is your own personal journey. And some people just look at it, and I looked at it from an entertainment perspective of like, oh, cool, this would make, I'm a writer, like this would make for a great story. And now I'm like, well, now I know where those people get those really great ideas like Avatar and Lord of the Rings. And like, I was like, oh, so that like Elvish language, that's like probably, you know,
Mm.
it's like, I don't just have wild imaginations. I mean, you might, but so I do believe mine's more of an activation tool. It definitely can have aspects of healing, and it can also just generally be a support. But lately, as with a lot of people who have gifts, they evolve and change, and
Yeah.
with everything that's going on, I've really been guided to do it for trees and nature at the moment. So I'll just go out. And a lot of people who do light language love doing that. One, because it's private and no one can hear you just jibber jabbering away into the bush, and there's no embarrassment or shame there. You can just let rip. And I think that's just because there's a lot of healing going on, and I guess they're more susceptible when you're out there in the energy, and you're usually in a better alignment place. There's less ego out there. So, and once I had my light language, I couldn't turn it off. So it's now constant. Like I can access it like like that. So it can also do, um, as we like to call it, galactic surgery. Like in extreme situations, it can really. Obviously, we're not doctors. We're not ever advising anyone not to do any of that stuff. But as a support to the energetic body, there's definitely some aspects that can definitely complement what you're already doing. Yeah.
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 And so thank you for giving that explanation. I think that really helps to give people an understanding of what they use it for. And, the best way really to understand something is to experience it yourself. And
Yeah.
obviously, you'll be giving a demonstration of a light language, and people can experience and how it resonates for them and how their body
Yeah.
feels and what sort of comes through. But on the human level, what has
Yeah.
been the greatest challenges for you in
Oof.
these gifts and abilities?
Well, there's obviously a massive cognitive barrier because it's not like you're saying you're psychic and you're kind of telling people like you've got maybe this gift and it's kind of a bit fun. This is like a full on different language. It's kind of like psych ward material, I guess, is how I would like if someone came to me and was like, right? Like that's how my light language can go. I would hope to think now I would try to be more compassionate and understand what was happening to them. But you see that in movies of people like doing like it's connected to kind of seances and witchcraft and rituals and things like that. And I think that's a whole other discussion about how that's been morphed and perhaps programmed for us to think that. But yeah, it's definitely a strange experience. I mean, telling people about it's pretty intense. Um, a lot of my friends have been pretty okay with it, but there are a lot that still don't know that I do it. So I kind of live two separate lives. I have like my normal Gen life, and then I have my galactic life. And I started to talk to my mum and dad a little bit about it, and they never kind of flinched. And most people who really know my heart and soul are okay with it, but there have been a lot of people who have rebuffed against it and been like, what's happened to you? You've had a full mental breakdown. And that's very distressing when they're friends of yours. But I just was like, well, hang on, but I've tried to, and I think what people don't see is the immense depression that perhaps followed that. So, on terms of like a dark night of the soul, on top of like, um, just having like a real meltdown basically about what's happening. And then physically, I've always, like I said, I've always had a lot of trouble with my eyes and head. So to me, that's a lot of headaches and exhaustion. So when I first started doing it, I'd start throwing up and I'd pass out. I was so dizzy from the inflammation.
Mm.
I couldn't hold it. I'd get diarrhea. Sorry, oversharing, but it was the impact on my body was, and
Mm.
even when I do a session, it can be intense. And so I had to learn practices again, thanks to the tools that, someone like you can provide of like, how do I clear my energy? How do I stabilize? How do I ground? What does that mean? I was like, so I had to learn this whole other repertoire of skill set that I didn't have. So yeah, that's kind of how that worked. And then family was, I think it's interesting that both my parents had passed away when it came into fruition, probably just from guilt. My brother knows that I do it, and he just kind of jokes about it. He doesn't really buy into it one way or the other, but he doesn't really, I don't think, understand it.
Mhm.
And yeah, I just kind of think that's where the definition of soul tribe, the people that actually understand where you're at. And it takes a lot of time for me to process. So being quiet and alone, so your behavior changes. It's like, oh, she's being really removed and it's like, no, I just need to process. Sometimes I write so many codes that I really need to just sit there with them and kind of digest them,
Yeah.
and understand this technology that I'm getting. Yeah. So it's, there's no shortage of, and even when I'm in a session, depending on what I'm doing, it can physically, like anything, make me cough or emotional, depending on what I'm doing. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's no shortage of symptoms. But
And I
yeah, I
really,
think
I really,
yeah,
I really appreciate you sharing the rawness of how that has impacted your life and your physical body. I mean,
mm,
can the change between Jen before she went to Sedona and Jen now? I mean, what is that transformation like for you? Can you even break?
yeah. Well, I guess I kind of like it as I felt like very two-dimensional before. Like it's like a cardboard cutout just walking around. I'm not even going to use the word three-dimensional. I mean, like literally just this is what you do. You go to school, you go to university. Da, 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 didn't question too much. I mean, I was always academic, but not didn't really push the limits of my thinking, which is strange because I'm quite a creative person. So I wasn't in my heart center at all. I was all in my ego.
Mhm.
Um, I was always incredibly emotional, but I would say I didn't have the empathy that I have now for other people. And like I was pretty, I've had some pretty humbling experiences because I was pretty awful to some people who had not gone through what I had gone, but had gifts, and I had absolutely been quite abusive to them about their abilities, and I regret that terribly, and I have since apologized to those people. But that was a real lesson learned for me, and I sometimes wonder if it was so brutal because it had to be. Because how else would? Because I was such a questioning, curious, inquisitive mind. How else would I possibly do it? So I still like all the things. I still listen to heavy metal, and I still like all that that kind of stuff. But my diet and how I think, and uh, I try to hold more space for people than, I mean, we all still live in our ego a little bit. I don't think, well, I'm not at my rainbow body yet, but hopefully one day. Um,
We're all working on it.
I just possibilities, I think everything and anything is possible, and not shutting my mind, and this need to understand and need to control, which is still a theme in my life in some aspects, kind of had to drop away. I was like, oh, I need scientific proof. And it's like, well, yeah, you can look out and see Arcturus in the sky, like it's there. And I was like, yeah, but um, and so I kind of let that go, which is still all ego, and I started to meditate a lot more.
Mhm.
I started to sit with myself more and yeah, just be open to things a little bit more. And I started watching a lot of documentaries and through the guidance of other people of, okay, well, I'm just going to watch this, and if it doesn't resonate, that's okay, but I would just take it on board. Whereas before I would have just been like, no, I was just so dismissive, so incredibly so I get it. If people are listening to this going, oh, that is absolutely so far-fetched, I was completely one of those people, and I was someone who was also awful to people who were experiencing a transition. And I didn't do it through drugs, and that's acceptable. You know, like, it's okay if you have an experience on drugs, but you can't have a gateway that's through grief. Or, and you know, I find that strange in our society, but that's how mine happened. Yeah.
Through grief. Wow.
Yeah. Mm.
Thank you for sharing that. And I really honor your journey. I know it hasn't been an easy one, and it's always forever evolving.
Yes.
But what do you think is the most beautiful thing that you've got out of this journey so far, and this transformation for you personally?
I've just had, you know, I always felt incredibly alone on this earth. And I still suffer quite with mental health aspects, or I now know them as energy, dense energy. I don't want to be here. I wanted to end my life several times. And now when that's hard, I can kind of, I feel like finally, like, I guess it's like when people talk about God, I just feel like I have I wouldn't refer to it as God, but I have a team or someone I can connect to that I believe there is a force greater than me that I actually believe is there. Because before I didn't have a safety net, and I just felt I was just on this earth and was just like, "Oh, I'm just going to be dust and bones when I leave." But now I feel like I have a little bit more love for the universe, and I kind of know where I slot in my place. And also the healing I've been able to bring to other people, and the discussions, and being able to talk openly about it and help other people. And then the meeting of the people through you and through like your cosmic sort of roundtables that we do, there's just some incredible, and we're all so different, but we're also understanding, and people really respect the boundaries of when you need to take some time to like work out what the hell is happening to you. So that's probably been the best thing. And also meeting other people and seeing their incredible art, or how their gift kind of has evolved. Like, some people do the most amazing artwork. And you know, I always think about great artists, and you think about paintings and anything great when they talk about, oh, it's, you know, the source of God or this inspiration that cracks through. Now I know what they're talking about. Like, I get that, because that's what's channeled through me. Not God, but like an energy source of, you know, let's just before everyone goes crazy, that universal source energy. I you know, but I still have days where I'm just like, I don't know if this is real, if I believe in it. Or there are days I'm like, oh, why am I even bothering? This is stupid. Or, don't get me wrong, like, I still very much am a human vessel trying to, you know, as long as I still have this thinking brain, I'm still going to be tackling that from various aspects. Yeah.
Beautifully said. And curiosity, through different modalities, through your light language, through your experience, have you been able to trace like soul journey and where you come from, or what resonates from you from a planetary level?
Yeah, so I guess as a stargazer my whole life, like, as even when I was little, I remember running out barefoot looking at the stars. There always has been like a star system that I always would look at. It was always in the sky, and I remember Dad, we would go out with a telescope, and it was Arcturus, which I think is the third brightest star. Don't quote me, everyone who's like out there in the astronomy community. If it's a bright star, it's just, you know, it's out there. And I would always look at that, but it would only come up through the horizon, you know, depending on what's going on. And so I was always like, oh, okay, you know, Arcturus. And then, like I mentioned before, a really good friend of mine, she had a lot of books about Arcturus, and I thought, well, that's not really a coincidence. Like, I've been paired up with someone. And then through quantum healing, which has been a phenomenal tool, and we have a phenomenal friend who facilitates just mind-blowing sessions. And what's brilliant about that is it's me accessing it, you know, through that hypnosis kind of state. It's no one else telling me. It's not a psychic. I'm not being fed information. That's me, and it's up to me what I do with that information. So that's been absolutely crucial. Talking to the likes of you, resonating with like, hey, what are, you know, some of the symptoms and traits that we kind of have, telling stories, and then just having a lot of sort of out of body astral dream experiences as well. And then through my dad. It was passed. So Team Arcturus, or a suburb of Arcturus, as I like to say.
Love it when you
as I think of my, I should clarify this, sorry, as one of my original source incarnations, because I know I've been on Sirius, and I know I've been all over, bit of a galaxy roamer, but in terms of where I think, I mean, I know I first incarnated as an actual like star, violet flame, diamond platinum star source, and I think it was a neutron star, and then somehow I ended up, I don't know how, but there's a time gap missing there from star to planet kind of arrival. Yeah. Yeah, that probably sounds really weird if you're a normal human watching.
No, but I love that, because I think the more we explore our origins, our soul origins, we realize that we have been everywhere and we have experienced a lot of things, and it's about coming back into that remembrance. So, and
there's great people who, there's so many books on it. I mean, pick it up. If it doesn't resonate, try something. There's so much material. I think you just have to be someone who uses your discernment, which is an ongoing life lesson, I think, in this realm. And Peter Maxwell Slattery has a great series out on the star races, and that just resonated with me so much. So I think there are people out there in their field who are doing this, and you can connect to make sense of it all.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much, Shannon. Thank you so much for the journey that you have had and still unfolding, and sharing wealth of information and knowledge and gifts and abilities. It's such a privilege and honor to be able to be a part of that journey and see it unfold. So
can't do it without the likes of having that support system like you guys, though. So that's really important. Yeah.
So if you would feel guided to, I would love to open up this forum so that people can experience and listen to your light language, if you have a particular transmission that wants to come through, and how people can best receive.
Yeah, so with light language, all you need to do is just really sort of get relaxed, comfortable, and just listen. Don't try to understand it. That's the biggest thing. Don't sit there going, oh my God, that sounded like German. And I would just try to be like a transparent wall, and you kind of let it pass through you. So I did get the intuitive hit that it would be about harmony and creating harmony, and maintaining your own harmony, because we spend a lot of time cultivating others and not our own. So that's what's going to come through. So you can sit or lay. The effects could happen immediately. There could be some tingling, buzzing. You could see your own stuff. So just be open to anything and everything. And if you can have some water afterwards, that's always advisable anyway, just to always keep hydrated when sort of doing energy work. So I guess start by taking 3 really deep breaths, dropping the shoulders, relaxing the jaw if that's something you've been tensing all day, feeling the ears and the facial muscles, the eyes kind of drop down a bit. Start breathing really big, like using those ribs to expand that we forget about, not short breaths, like really big belly breaths. And if you like, and if you're a yoga practice person, lion's breath, where you stick your tongue out like I just did, which looks silly. Really good though, get rid of all the toxins. From a science perspective, if you're still resisting, that's okay. And I just want you to imagine the color of your choice coming down through the crown. It's your special cocoon. It's the energy of the color that you work with. Mine is green today. I am getting a lot of gold energy coming through as well. It will be all different speeds and tones and types, so just see how you go. Tia ro brahira iskishka manaha akara odoro brahia kananahia. Nene hirakata oroko raka brahiskishka the hayo toroko arakaraka hirakai. So focusing on the heart getting wider, breathing in through the back of the heart and then exhaling out through the front. Tio toro manahia hia da heo toro askishka hairaka hiro braka hiko toro braika toro kodaka baka toro riskish kika hiraka hai niera manahiro toro kodaka hiraka hai. Brani ni hia na hio tairo maharoko ho tara kairi skishko haraka na hai yana na hira kana ho toro braka hai. Taking in a big breath. We'll just do a little bit more for the heart because I've got the go ahead that you can all handle it, so that's good. Bringing in that energy from the crown, flushing it through the heart, and then creating a great resonance in your field as you expand to maybe the other people in the house or that you're around, maybe out to the bus, out to the suburb that you live in, the city. See how far you can send it out with this. Tia no ho manahira kaya tea tai ora haya. Nena kaya toro kota haya tira hiski na hioto. Ona na hera kai. Otoro kata hara kata haya otana na hea hana. Oka kara kahara kahios koshkota hai. Yamana na hira kota kahara kata ge yotoro kota hara kotoro kota kahai. Iki go the go oskoshkota kahara kata kahira kata kahai. Oda rabra hira kata kahio toro kota kahai. Naka na hira kata kahai. Ika da ha oskushka mahana hira ka hera ka horoko bahaka ka hira ka hera ko oroko ka hiskish ka hai taka ka kara ka ka horoko ko horaka hana hana hira ko ho iki ke horoko and a beautiful flush of crimson pink coming in now. Yana hina how dara ka ka horoko oskush ka hira ko braka braka ke ka ototo braka ko braka ikiti to ko braka skish ka ikiti to ba ka ika ka. We are done. Just take a deep breath. Bring yourself back when you're ready. And something as short as that can really make a lot of punch, a little bit of a zip zap. So yeah.
Thank
let
you.
it work its magic.
Thank you so much, Jen. That was amazing. As always, I love your light language. It does wonders for me. So thank you everyone for watching. As a side note, every month, Jen, myself and Katie Jane, we do guided transmissions to help people to connect and clear through various parts. And it's a collaboration of energy work, sound, and light language. So that's something that you may want to look up and join us in our monthly transmissions. And of course, all the details if you wish to connect with Jen further and find out more about her and her work, that will all be put down in the bottom there. So thank you so much again. Really honor what you do in the world, and it just brings such a smile to my heart, you know, to see you out there doing this work and being an advocate and teaching people from your own experience. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome, and thank you so much for being someone who has, you know, and I've said it so many times, there's a few of you. I don't know if I'd be here without some of you. So I'm really grateful to the support I've had, because it's challenging at times. And thank you so much for this. And I'm so excited to watch all the rest of the stuff that you've got for this week. It's very exciting. So all the best with everything else.
Jen, and thank you so much for everyone who has watched, and if you got this far, and yeah, we'll certainly be doing more collaborations, and keep an eye out. So much love to everyone and much gratitude. And hope you're enjoying World Unity Week. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.